chapter. We also have an immediate need. If there's anybody who's interested in website maintenance or has a talent for that, talk to myself or any member of the board. We're actually all wearing green name tags, so you can know who we are. If you're interested in helping us maintain our website, hit us up for that. Skip, did you want to talk about member fees? If you haven't paid,
please pay.
Yeah. We've done really well. We're almost there on everybody. Okay, Colette.
Good morning, everyone. We are going to be doing presenting the Buyer of the Year and Manager of the Year awards. We did receive some really good nominations, and then the committee came to a decision on who we were going to go with. And so I just kind of wanted to start with Buyer of the Year. They can come up, and we will celebrate that. So Buyer of the Year is Stacy Smith. She's here. She can come up.
She's on her way, actually.
Okay, then we will move on to the Manager of the Year, and hopefully she'll come by then. The Manager of the Year is Brandon Thomas. So, Brandon Thomas. So I was going to read a couple of things about Brandon while I have him up here, and he can't leave. You're up here. Okay, so he was nominated by Martha Wilding, so I can kind of let you know that because it's kind of in first person, so this is her words. She says, August 16, 2016 was one of the best days of my career. Brandon began his adventure as a purchasing director at Slick. He had been my go-to guy for the last 10 years when he worked at UBU. In just a couple months that he was here, he updated our college policies and procedures, which in turn made our jobs as buyers much more efficient and effective. In the short time he's been at the college, he has gained much respect from everyone he comes in contact with. While at UBU, he was instrumental in implementing SideQuest. His knowledge of the system is impressive to say the least. He's always open to ideas and suggestions that can improve the workflow and the ease of our end users. Not only did he bring his high-level professionalism, knowledge, and expertise, he brought peace and harmony back to our department. His leadership skills and excellent experience in public procurement are priceless. Words cannot express my gratitude and admiration for Brandon. He does such an outstanding job on a daily basis. We are the luckiest buyers ever to call him our director and leader. So, Brandon Thomas.
No, not yet.
Thank you. Did she arrive yet? I was looking. We'll do that a little bit later.
Oh, there she is, right here.
Everybody, Stacy Smith, Buyer of the Year. You're good. Come on. So I'm going to read a couple of things about you. Stacey was nominated by Jeff Walker. He says, Stacey Smith is a wonderful employee and is very deserving of this award and recognition. Stacey is the senior buyer in the Weaver School District. She is directly responsible for the Child Nutrition, Fine Arts, Science programs, and the district-wide Amazon plan. In addition to these areas, she plays various support roles and assists with training throughout our organization. She is always learning and applying innovative processes and ideas. She has also proven herself a leader when her organization undergoes change and our department is affected. Despite the overwhelming amount of work that everyone has to do, Stacey always finds ways to help others. Her willingness to assist people and her commitment to educating coworkers is amazing. She's always great at following up and seeing a project through to completion. Stacey is currently working on updating our child nutrition program, procurement policies, and procedures to correlate with federal guidelines. This has become a demanding project and requires a lot of additional time on her part. Her workload has increased during this time, but the quality of her work still exceeds expectations. So, Stacy Smith, Fire of the Year. Thank you, everyone.
Perfect, thank you, and thank you to those who nominated their coworkers, their supervisors for this. It really is the individuals who make up what procurement is and makes it a great industry to be a part of. Okay, so we have a few minutes before we have our first speaker, and you can see that we've decided to switch things up a little bit in the way that the room is organized. And we want, one of the greatest benefits of NIGP, and really what I consider one of the greatest benefits of our industry as a whole, is our ability to collaborate with one another. I have multiple times in the 3.5 years that I've been in government purchasing contacted entities across the country to get ideas for RFPs and different bids and different solicitations. And it amazes me every time at how willing people are to help each other. And last year at Forum, I really came to understand how integral our chapter is to helping one another. And that only happens when we get to know who we are and get to know each other. So we're gonna do a little activity that kind of gets you out of your seats and possibly out of your comfort zones. No apologies, but that's what's happening. So what we're gonna do, and there's gonna be a lesson involved in this as well. What you're gonna do is you're going to line up as a chapter in order of your birthday, your birth month and your birthday. We'll start with January over here and wrap around the room and have December right wherever December is. The catch is that you have to do this without speaking. So figure out however that works for you and line up according to your birth month and your birthday without speaking. No speaking. Okay, are we there? Close. Okay, let's see how we did. We'll start with Tom. Tom, what's your birth, your month, and your day?
1-1.
22nd, 31st, February 2nd.
18th.
20th.
21st. 22nd.
22nd.
March 2nd.
March 3rd. 14th.
March 18th.
March 26th. April 3rd.
April 15th. April 27th.
April 15th.
May 1st. May 9th. May 16th. May 14th. May 16th. May 17th.
May 24th.
May 28th. May 30th. June 7th. June 20th. June 25th.
July 6th.
June 9th. July 2nd.
September 27th.
I'm October 1st. August 11th.
August 27th.
August 28th.
September 10th. September 20th.
September 21st. September 27th.
October 11th. 27th.
November 4th. November 14th. And November 20th. November 20th.
December 13th.
15th.
19th.
29th. 30th.
Sweet. Okay, stay where you're at. So there are a couple of things we can learn from this experience that's related to procurement, right? So let's pretend that I'm an end user and you are all government purchasing agents, and I gave you, I had a need. I needed you to line up, and I needed you to do it according to your birthday, and I just said do it without speaking. Do sometimes in purchasing we get our end users who kind of give us incomplete information and just say I want this. And the amazing thing is that we figure it out. And I think that is where we as buyers, as contract managers, as contract analysts, add value, is that we problem solve. We figure it out somehow. I saw people putting up their hands to represent their month. I saw people writing it on paper. It didn't matter how you did it, you eventually got there. And sometimes we make mistakes, right? We had some mistakes back here. But at the end of the day, we get where we want to go. And so I think as you go back to your organizations, look at yourselves as problem solvers and look for ways in which you can add value to your organization by saying yes, much like what we learned last time in our chapter meeting. Now, what we're going to do, sorry, not sorry, but we're going to count you off 1 to 13. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go back to your table, you're going to grab your stuff, and you're going to move to the table that your number is. Okay? So, Colette, will you count off 1 to 13? Start with Tom.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12,
Skip just sit still.
I actually have.
From the University
Okay, so now you're at your new table. These are going to be your new friends for the meeting. I don't know if you'll get to interact with them during the meeting, but you'll get to interact with them right now. So, what we want you to do is take a few minutes. You're going to share who you are, what organization you're a part of, what's the most unique purchase you've ever made in your career, and then if you brought cards, share your business cards, because these people can help you in your professions. They can help you with your problems and help you solve issues. All right, go ahead and take a couple minutes to do that.
We're going around the table. I'm Adam I also do construction, janitorial, landscaping, and
Okay, my name's Blake Steele.
anyways, I get there's a few things that I want to control like noise and sound and create a barrier. So room like this is felt down so they can divide them into classrooms and shift them around, and you can't hear on one side versus the other.
So these are like our older sons, right?
So, manufacturing. And I was their warehouse manager and supplier.
Okay, perfect. Let's wrap it up. I just want to thank you all for indulging us in this. I know that sometimes that can make us uncomfortable, meeting new people, but it only will help, I can promise you that. So, with that being said.
And in January 2018, Chris was appointed the Director of the Division of Purchasing and General Services for the state of Utah. As the Purchasing Director, he serves as Utah's Chief Procurement Officer. He is responsible for procurement, print services, state bound, and state surplus operations for the state. He started with the Division of Purchasing in 2014 and as a contract analyst, and served as the Assistant Director from 2015 to 2018. So, please welcome Chris.
We're gonna connect that back again. Thanks for letting me speak here today, Jason. That's wonderful. As you can tell, a lot of the new members of NIGP come from state purchasing. And like it was introduced, I just was appointed as the Chief Procurement Officer for the state of Utah in January, and I've taken over the Division of Purchasing after 10 years. Kind of to show you where we are with the division. If you worked in the Division of Purchasing for less than 3 years, stand up. So pretty much everyone that said that they were new to NIGP. Within 3 years, if you've worked in state or anywhere, public procurement, stand up if you've been here for less than 3 years. So keep standing by step. So you can see that there's some change in the Division of Purchasing we've had over the last few years. Is it not on? Jeremy, you have one job. Hello? Hello?
It was on. It was on.
It says mute. Can you hear me now? Oh, we can't. All right, so I'm going to yell a little louder until my voice goes. So you can see the change that's gone on in the division. We have a lot of new people in our division. Some have left. Here we go. Thank you, Jared. Round of applause for Jared. Big bow, Jared. All right, well, yeah, you can see the change that we've had in the Division of Purchasing over the last 3 years. We've had a number of you leave to go on to different jobs as well, and we're glad for that. And as Jason was playing that game before with you guys, with not being able to talk, to be able to communicate your birth dates, I thought, well, that's great. That's a way of me getting my staff quiet at times as they're talking. And then I knew two things were going to occur before they happened, as you guys played that game. The first one, I knew Tara was going to be the first one to speak. And the next one is over a former employee. I knew as soon as Jason said, okay, we're done, that former employee was going to do something at that point. And that was Faye. When Faye worked in our office, anytime I would end the meeting, I'd say, any questions? And everyone would say no. And then we'd begin to stand up, and Faye would say, oh, I've got one more question. So I knew that was going to happen. So, all right, to start off, the governor signed a declaration declaring that next week is purchasing week in the state of Utah. And so it's March 18th through the 24th. I understand that it's procurement month for some other nationally. Is this the picture? So this is the declaration that we got mailed to us from the governor's office. Those that don't get that joke is the governor's office is in the Capitol, and we're in the building behind the Capitol, but we got this in the mail yesterday. And so we're going to give it to Jason, because it does mention NIGP, and being the president of NIGP this year, is we thought that would be a great thing for him to hang in his office and have no more room to work since it's so large. So, all right, without further ado, I've been asked to speak for an hour on kind of the status of the division, the status of the procurement code, where we're at after session. So, click. Oh. Next. So yeah, newly appointed procurement officer, there became something very apparent as I started to travel and talk to legislators about the Utah Procurement Code, as I talked to others, and that nobody liked me. And it wasn't hidden. I had a legislator tell me to my face that she believed that the public procurement was dead and that we needed to get rid of it. Yeah. What? Thanks, Nick. So, I guess click. So, procurement code amendments. This is going to be the difficult part of this presentation. I think you guys were expecting an hour of updates to the procurement code, as history has said over the last 7 or 8 years. So, this was my presentation on some amendments to the Utah Procurement Code. I didn't have any, click. There were some hurdles in what was going on is, first and foremost, the representative that decided, or that was sponsoring the bill, decided to retire at the beginning of the session. So he's not gonna run next year, which meant that leadership gave him a lot of high priority bills. It was Representative Rower. We have seen his name in the paper because he was running the bill to get rid of the death penalty and some other bills. So we started off as number 2 on his list and fell to number, I think, 18 on his list of priority of his bills. So as it came through, we decided to try and amend it to really narrow it down, see if we could rush something through. I reached out to a lot of you to see what was necessary, what was not. I think we took it down substantially. But in the end, it went through committee with a favorable vote, got onto the House floor. I was at the Capitol building one night until after 11 because we thought it was going to be voted on the House floor, and they took a motion to adjourn for the night, and that was the last of the bill. Then the next day, it went into the Rules Committee, and the last few days of session, it just never came out. It stayed in the Rules Committee. So that's what occurred. Also, what occurred, and we'll talk about it later, is there was a comment made to the representative about part of the bill. I worked with that person to see if we could correct the issue. There really wasn't an issue, but the person never went back to the representative as well to say that there was a non-issue anymore. So the representative held on to the bill a little longer, and that's why it got delayed so much. So there were hurdles. We are still going to be looking at the Utah Procurement Code. I'll mention that later on. That was part of the discussions throughout with legislators, is that they are hearing from their constituents, the people that we deal with on a daily basis, that there's a lot of gotchas and policy in the procurement code, and they'd like to see that get taken out of. So we'll go over the process on that. All right. Just kidding. There were some bills that dealt with the Utah procurement code. It wasn't part of what we did. Go to the next one. So there were 5 bills that affected the Utah procurement code. I couldn't find the check mark on my PowerPoint presentation, so they got smiley faces. You can see that there were other bills that were trying to be run that just never passed out of the House, never passed out of the Senate, never made it for a final vote. We'll go over those bills and what they did to the procurement code really brief. Again, this was not purchasings or anybody else's change. The bill was intended to change something else in the Utah code, and by changing something else, it affected the Utah procurement code. Okay, next one. So the first one may be something some of you have heard about. It's the public-private partnership amendments to the code. Last year, there was a bill run that said that we allow for public-private partnerships under the Utah procurement code, but it never was discussed the process. It never was discussed what needs to take place in order to enter into one of these agreements. So this year, the sponsor of that bill came back and wrote more detail. And this is going to be found in 63G 6A 712. And it allows vendors to submit unsolicited proposals to agencies for an infrastructure project or a project to collect, analyze, and distribute health data to improve health and healthcare and to facilitate interaction regarding health and healthcare issues. Does anybody deal with that second issue?
No, but I was just gonna ask, what exactly is an infrastructure project? That's a pretty broad term.
That is a pretty broad term, and what? Like, I died again? Quickly, is it back on? Okay, so I have to hold it up to my face. All right, so an infrastructure project is widely defined. On the floor, it was asked what they meant by infrastructure. And the sponsor said infrastructure relates to road building, toll roads. What was mentioned to me was the development on Utah Lake of housing. What was mentioned to me, the inland port as well, that was voted through, was another idea of a private-public partnership. So those types of agreements. Infrastructure can be broad. It can be IT infrastructure. It can be healthcare infrastructure. At first, the word infrastructure wasn't in there, so it opened it up to any goods or service that we could receive proposals for. And so I worked with the sponsor to at least include the word infrastructure to try and limit somehow the possibility of these unsolicited proposals coming through. The second one, a project on healthcare, was an amendment on the House floor by a representative that works for the Department of Health. So it's very specific. I don't think any of us will have to worry about that one. So I'm going to go through kind of the process that happens when an unsolicited proposal comes through. Because you may want to know this as, they probably won't come through to you, but somebody, a project manager, a boss, somebody may receive an unsolicited proposal. So we have to make sure that the process is protected under the law. Can you go to the next slide? So first, you're not required to even consider an unsolicited proposal. That's something that we argue for as well, as we don't want to be responsible for considering each unsolicited proposal that comes in. Because if you're like me, you probably get 50 emails a day from vendors touting their new product, their new service. And whether or not that is defined as an unsolicited proposal is up to you and how you want to take it. But it says a procurement unit that receives an unsolicited proposal may not award a contract for the procurement item described in the unsolicited proposal unless the procurement unit first engages in a standard procurement process for proposals to provide the procurement item described in the unsolicited proposal, or awarding the contract without the procurement unit, or going through a sole source. So just because you receive an unsolicited proposal doesn't mean you can just contract with that vendor saying you like the idea. You've still got to go through a standard procurement process. And that process may be a little different than what you're used to on an RFP. And this is different from a lot of other public-private partnerships that are throughout the nation, is that in some states, if an entity submits one of these unsolicited proposals, a state agency can just enter into a contract with them right away without going through a procurement process. The sponsor of the bill wanted to make sure that that was not the case in Utah. And really what an unsolicited proposal is kind of like a reverse RFI, is it's allowing the vendors to submit information and not worrying about whether or not we're going to disclose the information to others, because we're going to get into that, is you have to protect the unsolicited proposal and you have to treat it as confidential. Okay, next slide. So here's kind of the process. An entity may receive an unsolicited proposal. If you receive that unsolicited proposal, it may be claimed as confidential. They still have to identify the pieces of that proposal that are going to be considered confidential. They have to let you know. The deal with private-public partnerships or public-private partnerships is that these tend not to be just spam emails, but lengthy proposals that they have spent money on developing and identifying what could work for them and what could work for you. So in doing this, they're expending resources, they're taking up their time, they may be putting confidential information in there so that you will consider it and realize that it may be viable. So after you determine whether or not anything in there is confidential, so if you receive a spam email and it's not labeling any information as confidential, then you don't need to treat that information as confidential. It has to specifically call out the information as confidential. Then you have to make a decision whether or not you're going to consider it and review the unsolicited proposal. Just because you receive them doesn't mean you're going to review them and make a determination. There is a provision in there that if reviewed, you may charge the person that submitted the unsolicited proposal a fee to evaluate it, because you may have to go back and look at the information and get backup on that information to verify what they're saying is accurate. And if you need to pay somebody to do that backup and the due diligence on that, then you can charge the vendor that submitted the unsolicited proposal. If you like what they're talking about in their unsolicited proposal, you cannot just enter into a contract. You need to go through a standard procurement process or through a sole source. When you issue the standard procurement process or the standard or the sole source, you don't disclose the vendor that submitted the unsolicited proposal. You just let everybody know you've received a unsolicited proposal for this type of project, and you're seeing if any other vendors want to submit a proposal for that same project to compete against that unsolicited proposal. Then you're going to evaluate all the proposals that come in and note that the unsolicited proposal, that vendor does not need to reissue a response to that solicitation. As you can take their initial unsolicited proposal and treat that as their proposal to the standard procurement process. And then after that, you can enter into a public-private partnership agreement. Does anybody have any questions on that? Yeah.
Okay, you get this unsolicited proposal. Now you have some cost. And it's pretty clear that only the purchasing person is supposed to have that cost. So that I can perceive as a problem if a department gets the cost, so they've already got a hand up.
So yeah, we talked about that with the sponsor, and how I would address this in my office is if it came in, is that if anybody had reviewed the cost, they would not be allowed to evaluate the proposals that came in. Is that executive branch procurement units under the Division of Purchasing will have to immediately separate costs and look at the project itself to see if it's viable. And they may have somebody step in and say, is the cost reasonable even? But that person that reviews cost cannot then evaluate the proposals that come in through.
And that would be anybody that looked at it.
And anybody that looked at it.
Okay, good.
That's how I'm going to treat them if they come in. I actually don't see, I think this is going to be bigger for UDOT people. You'll probably be dealing with that. Health, obviously, since it was written for one of your divisions. But that's about it. I don't see a lot of these coming in. If they do come in, let me know, and we can clean this up if need to be. That's what the sponsor told me on part of this. Yeah.
You're kind of referring to situations where we receive unsolicited
emails.
It would seem that, I'm not sure if it's in the language now, but maybe a cleanup would be that to make sure that it's clearly separated in that type of situation, that when someone submits this, that they reference the code.
Okay.
Submitting it under this.
I've got to go back and look, and I'll look at this after I'm done, because that was something I requested, that if they are submitting an unsolicited proposal, they need to document that it's coming under 712. And if they don't list that, then it's not an unsolicited proposal. But my fear is that a lot of our junk emails, they'll start to say this is an unsolicited proposal under section 12, and that we need to treat those as confidential. So if that starts coming in, let me know. because that's something that I did bring up with the sponsor. I don't know if it ultimately got in there. I'd have to go back and look. But that's actually what we were trying to address as well as the junk emails. All right, there was a slight modification to 63G 681402 that's specific to UDOT for transportation. And there was a slight modification to 63G 68303. It just requires any training that the Division of Purchasing puts on. It must meet certain new requirements, and it makes me have training that's electronic if it's required. So some of our executive branch agencies need to take small purchase training. We just need to make sure that it's available online to them. So those were all the changes that came through the procurement code. Any questions? Okay. Yeah.
On the previous one, just two quick questions. There's a time when something goes from being unsolicited to they happen to work with somebody in your department and that's how they got something at baseline. Now it's not.
Yeah, that's going to be something that we're going to train on for the executive branch, is how to treat these. They're common in other states, like I said, but mainly for roads and for sports arenas. But some states have said, well, it's infrastructure, so it can't be IT. I just haven't heard of any IT infrastructure being built using a private-public partnership. Because sometimes those companies don't want to be affiliated with a public entity in creating the infrastructure. So again, I think, Sean here, here you are. Has UDOT, do you know if UDOT using any of these?
No, to my knowledge, we have not yet used that. It was fairly new and introduced, like you mentioned, so it's still just navigating how we're going to use it. But to my knowledge, we haven't.
Yeah, and I actually see this as a positive for public procurement, is sometimes this will allow the vendors, kind of like I said, to do a reverse RFI, get us information so that we know what's going on, how it's being used, and then we can make the determination with others whether or not it needs to go through a procurement process. And if that's the case, then that's what we go and do. But this is just something to pay attention to. I don't see it being used that often for goods or services. In fact, it should not be used for goods and services for the most part. Okay. So yeah, usually this would be another 30 minutes of amendment code updates. And what's sad is I've got 3 more presentations after this one where they've asked me to come train on procurement code updates, and each one of those is for an hour. I think you guys were used to this sort of thing, huh? So, I'm just going to move on to talking about the division where we're going. And so our plan in the division is changing. We want to help out. We want to be seen as a positive. That was something clear as I talked to representatives and senators and lobbyists about the Utah Procurement Code and the procurement process, is that a lot of them just see the procurement process is red tape, is a delay, and that it's not useful. And then I would sit down with them and explain kind of what I envision and why I think the procurement code is useful and why what we do as procurement professionals is a necessity. That they would just say, well, let's update the code again. Let's get something that works for everyone. And yeah, the groaning and the moaning has begun. But it's something that we should look at, is what can be done to make it more flexible. So next slide. So in the division, we have the top 10 priorities for 2018. This is a flyer that we've created. It should be on our website in the next day or two. It's just topics that we're looking to address in the division. And if any of you have ideas, if any of you want to make suggestions, please let me know. We're open to anything at this point. The first one is strengthening the strategic role of the state central procurement for the division. The second is IT procurement transformation. The third is measuring success and procurement metrics. The fourth is procurement planning and effective sourcing strategies. The fifth is driving procurement efficiency with automated software solutions. The sixth is risk management strategies, supplier relationships, and contract management. The seventh is building a world-class procurement profession. The 8th is competitive staffing and talent management strategies. The 9th is modernization of the procurement process. And the 10th is procurement integrity, fair competition, and transparent practices. This is something that we're going to focus on in the division. We want to make sure that we're constantly improving, that we're here to help everybody out. That we don't want to be just seen as the division of purchasing and we do what we do and you guys all do what you do. Is we want to be able to come together, act as resources for each other, be able to answer any questions you may have. I like that Jason made everybody sit in new groups because I immediately noticed that all my staff was in 3 or 4 tables. And being new to NIGP, I wanted my staff to kind of spread out, get to know people, become a part of the committees, and try and focus on these goals. These are just goals. There's not a 1 through 10 priority list. It's just the 10 things we're going to be focusing on. And if any of you have suggestions for us, please let me know. Is that we may not be doing something right up there, and we want to hear how you're doing it. Can you go to the next slide? So one of the ones was the use of technology. Is we're actively looking at different ways of looking at analytics as it becomes apparent that this is where a lot of others are going, is to look at data. We've got SideQuest and that e-procurement system that we can use. We've got Spend Radar that helps us with our state cooperative contracts. The state gave or appropriated money to the Department of Technology Services to enter into an agreement with Qualtrics to help us obtain more data and an understanding of what's going on in the state. We're not going to stop there. We're looking at other programs that will help us modernize our procurement processes, knowing that what we're doing is going to be beneficial and that we're using the best processes that we can and using our resources appropriately. And if any of you guys are using new technologies or think you want to use technologies, let me know, and you can help us pilot some of these programs. I want to enter into more pilot programs and pilot contracts so that we can see what works, what doesn't. I mean, I'm sure most of you get emails from vendors saying, if you come to us, we will save you millions of dollars if you use our technology. I get those emails all the time, and luckily they're not under 712, so I just delete them. But let us know what's out there, what's new, what have you heard in different groups that has worked, so that we can start using it as a state to become more advanced in our profession. Okay. So another thing that we want to work on that is probably 2 C words that you haven't thought of when you think of the division of purchasing over the last few years, but I want to cooperate and collaborate with you all. Is each one of you brings something unique to the public procurement process, and we need to act as a team. The purpose of the Utah Procurement Code is to ensure the transparency and fairness in the public procurement process, and we're all a part of it. And I was talking with somebody about just an issue here or there poisons the whole well. So one of us has an issue, one of us has a protest, or it appears as though we're steering a contract, we're doing something illegal, it affects the whole community. It doesn't just affect that entity, it affects all of us. So we should be willing to work together because let's just be honest. If we do our jobs right, we're not getting written up in the newspaper congratulating that we got a great state-of-the-art system. All that glory goes to the department that got it. Can't tell you how many times I've read in the newspaper about one of our contracts that's being put into place, and everybody's touting how great it is, and they never mention the division of purchasing. But I can tell you, we make the newspaper when there's even the appearance of steering, where there's an appearance of one of us not doing our jobs and just favoring a vendor over another vendor. So we should collaborate more often. Is that we should be working as a team, we should have trust, we should look at each other to inspire one another, exchange information. I think Utah is very unique in what we do, is that we collaborate really well right now together. You can see that through the organizations of EdPAC, UPAC, what's the other one that we, CatPAC, MPAC. I want to create an IT pack for purchasing of IT products to bring people together to make sure that we're all following the same processes. But it's through that exchange of information that we become more in alignment of what's being done. Because as we exchange this information, vendors cannot then say, well, Canyon School District, you do it this way, Grant School District does it this way, and Jordan School District does it this way. Is it that again? I won't break that up right now. So, yeah, as you exchange this information, we become stronger, and then the vendors can't say that we all do it differently and complain to the legislators, and then they are the ones that want to change the Utah procurement code. Because if we're not involved in the change of the procurement code, I can tell you where that goes. Is look to the state of Illinois, is their procurement professionals have no say in the last update of the procurement code. And right now, if a procurement professional or even a project manager has an idea of what they're going to buy, that cuts off the communication with the vendor community. They can't issue an RFI, they can't discuss it, they can't do anything. As soon as they know they want to go out for apples to buy, they cannot talk with farmers, they cannot talk with the vendors that they have on contract about it. It just shuts off all communication. And their procurement professionals that I talk to over there say it just kills them. Is they're putting out solicitations that are 3 or 4 years old because they don't know how to improve them because of the lack of communication. So we need to be, if there's going to be a change, we need to be the ones at the forefront and be able to communicate this is why a change should occur or it shouldn't. We should support each other, and we should share the success that we have as a community. I love that you guys did a manager of the year and buyer of the year. I think that's great that you're sharing in their success and that you're rewarding those that work hard in this profession, because I think it's great. All right, next slide. For the division, we want to create, those that were at the last NIGP meeting, we had a presentation on leading with yes. And we tend to be, in public procurement, leading with no, because the code doesn't allow it. And then we just have the conversation. No, you can't do that. No, you can't give it to your friend. No, you can't do that. We need to lead with yes. If somebody comes with a problem, we need to be the one that leads with yes and says, yes, we can give you that procurement item, but here's how we're going to do it. And then we need to create those raving fans. If anybody's been a part of our division, we read a book entitled Raving Fans. And if anybody wants that book, I'll make sure we give you a copy of it as well. It tells you how to create raving fans for those that you deal with, especially since we're providing a service. It teaches you the things that you can do, the little things that you can do to make your customers, and for me, customers is broad. It means the vendors, it means those agencies we work with, it means the legislators, it means the governor's office. It makes them raving fans of you because of all the small things you do for them, that they want to come back to you. For PEP this week, or next week, for our PEP training, we're actually bringing back that group that did the leading with yes, because I thought it was such a good topic to discuss. Is don't lead with no, because when you lead with no, the conversation immediately ends, and they don't want to listen to you anymore. But when you lead with yes and have an idea and a solution, they'll pay attention to you and follow through with it. And so we have to be innovative in our public procurement processes. We have to think things through. I always tell my staff, it's okay to tell somebody that you don't know and that you will get back to them. You don't need to feel like you need the answer every time. It's all right to say, I don't know, but I will research this and get back to you. And you can come up with the solution, present them with the solution, and they're going to be happy that you took the time to actually think about their problem. and you become on the same level of them as it comes to their problem. Okay? So let's talk about the procurement code and administrative rules. Is a lot of why we lead with no is because of how they're structured. And I don't think I'm the only one that says maybe we can change something here and there. I think all of you have reached out and said that at some point, or have thought that internally. Who hasn't thought that? Raise your hand if you think the procurement code and rules are perfect. Really? Not one of you, not even my staff. So we do need to come together. This is where I want to collaborate the most, is what works, what doesn't. I've already had a discussion with Jared. I've leaned on Jared kind of to be a mentor for me over the last month. And one thing I want to change is to add a scoring range of 0 to 5. Something small, but something that, yeah, you can say that there's change. There's something that needs to occur. So we can start there. If I've got no attachment to the code or rule, so let me know what you think of it. I don't have a problem with change or having a discussion of change. I know that this occurs a lot with code and rule, is that there's a public policy out there, and we may just need a rock this size to fix it. But instead, we get unintended consequences that are much bigger than that rock that we've tried to fix, that gap. Sometimes in the procurement code and rule, we would have a little gap of something that needed to occur, and we would fill it in with a rock or a boulder that was way too big, and that caused a lot of unintended consequences. And I want to know what those are. You guys are just as involved in the procurement code and rules as I am. Sometimes I'm blind to certain things, so I need to hear it. But just because, but remember that every change could come with an unintended consequence. So just because you may not like something doesn't mean it's going to occur. I'll be upfront and honest with that. Is I have to think about the Department of Health, DWS, a lot of other departments. So I need to make sure any change helps them out as well and won't have too many unintended consequences for them. My wrist is hurting from holding the mic up this way. So let's just be careful with that as you tell me stuff. I want a lively discussion, and I'm going to pull in the procurement policy board to have that lively discussion. See what works, what doesn't, what we can do to improve, and move on from there. A lot of what was brought up by legislators is they felt like there's a lot of gotcha moments. Anybody know this game? Really? Best Nintendo game ever. You got to use that gun and it was paintball, but no, okay. So there's a lot of gotcha moments, not just for vendors, but for us as well. Who's ever done a solicitation and then found out, oh, I needed to do X, Y, and Z as well under the rule, or I need to get, oh, whoa. You guys should have seen your heads nod back and forth in totally unison. Did you see that, Tyler? So we need to look at those gotcha moments. The vendors community is not happy with those either. And I'm reaching out to vendors to find out what they like, what they don't like, what would work better, what wouldn't work better, what states they like, what states they don't like, so that we don't fall into a trap of getting improvements and having a lot of unintended consequences. And so we need to get away from those gotcha moments. And that's something that I want to focus on as we take a look, is let me know those gotcha moments that you've had as you practice public procurement. And I'm going to change, I want to use the word practice public procurement because it's something that we never become perfect at. It's kind of like a doctor or a lawyer. They don't lawyer, they don't doctor, they practice. And that's what we do, is we practice public procurement. We make sure it works for each individual project that we want. And I know a lot of you in the last few years have thought that state purchasing had a don't call us, we won't call you philosophy. But I can promise you that I'll take any phone call. I'll hear you out on any issue. I'll come meet with you and discuss your issue. I want to talk with everybody about what's gone on in public procurement. Not to say what's gone on in the last few years has been 100% bad. I don't think it has, but I want to make sure that it works for everyone. And so I'm willing to travel, I'm willing to talk, I'm willing to take you out to lunch to discuss all these issues. Because I want to know what's going on. You want to go to lunch, Jared? There goes my one lunch offer. Sorry, guys. All right. So yeah, like this comic says, is give me all the information you can, and we'll think of a use for it later. Is we need to start taking this data, aggregating it, figuring it out, and then trying to apply it. And I commit that I will not run an amendment in the public procurement code unless I can get buy-in, not from all, but from most. Because I don't want to change something just to change it anymore. I want to get the buy-in that's necessary. So we'll get all the information, see what we can do, and if we need to make a change, we will. But knowing that, that's the change you guys want, not just the change that I want. But I want to get all the information, so please send me as many emails, phone calls as you can, letting me know. And don't feel ashamed. I'm not going to call anybody out and say, no, can you believe what so-and-so wrote me or said to me about the procurement code? I'm not going to be that way. Okay? There was a map there, I promise you. The state of Utah, so envision it. Everybody see the state there? Perfect, right? Is it there? Oh, I didn't even know I could do that. So, yeah, no, I'm planning on traveling around. I tried to set up some meetings with some of you. I plan, like I said, plan to visit with vendors. I plan to visit with a lot of different entities just to see what's working, what's not. And then we'll go from there. So if you want me to come visit your office and learn your process, let me know. I'll come out for a day, see what you guys do, and go from there. Don't be, again, but don't think this is a way of me figuring out your system to tell you you're wrong. It's just, I want to learn. I'm trying to collaborate, trying to cooperate, trying to figure out what works, what doesn't, because I'm sure all of you have on your office walls a list of things you hate about the procurement code. And so let's discuss them, okay? So suggestions or comments, send them my way. I'm happy to read them, hear them, everything, okay? Like I said, I want to get the buy-in that's necessary and make sure that it works for as many of you as possible and that we create a process that will be followed. In some states, they may have 5 or 6 procurement codes depending on the entity that's using it. And I can tell you that the vendors hate it because they don't know how to answer a solicitation for one state entity compared to another one. It just confuses them. So we need to get buy-in from everybody so that we can become more unified in what we do. And then we can start to leverage our buying power and our procurement code to be the best it can be. And kind of what's been brought up is we've kind of gone, as of now, to more, let's get to the letter of the law. And, am I talking that much? It's more on my wrist, I promise. So we got to get to a point where we are having more freedom with the spirit of the law than the letter of the law. And so I think that's where it would give you guys more flexibility, more determinations on what you're doing. We'll see where you guys want to take it. Okay? But I don't want to make it overly complicated. I've spoken with some people about the procurement code, and they immediately say, great, I want a section for my department. And then others say, great, I want a section just in the procurement code for how to do business with my department. And that's what I don't want. I want to stay away from making it more complex if that's the route we go, and but making it easier for everybody to use it. Okay? So now, talk about state cooperative contracts and what we do and what we intend to do moving forward. Okay. Sorry. Just kind of a catch up on what we're seeing is that pricing structures are changing. And I think a way that businesses used to run businesses is that they would have 8, 9, 10, 11 different price sheets. and then give you a discount upon the different price sheet that they were showing you. So they may have just an MSRP price sheet. They may have a government price sheet. They may have a school's price sheet. They may have X, Y, and Z price sheet. And then they'd say, okay, for the product in this price sheet, we'll give you a 10% discount. Well, vendors are starting to change that because of Amazon. Is that nobody wants to know the discount anymore. They want to know, what am I going to pay? And so I've had quite a few vendors say, you're going to notice in the next few years our discounts are going down, but that's because our price sheets are going down as well. Is we have to be able to publish what our prices are going to be without those discounts, without having to include discounts later on. And that's because everybody is accustomed to Amazon showing you the price and you knowing what you're going to pay without discounts. And so a lot of retailers are following with Amazon and saying, okay, here's our price. We're not going to offer any more discounts. This is just what you get. Instead of you having to say, well, if I buy 5 of these, 6 of these, then I'll get a 35% discount. Because they want it to be easier for you guys to understand. So we're starting to see that. And I just wanted to bring this up with state pricing, as well as probably what you're going to experience as you go out for contracts, is contracts where you may have had 50% off at some point are now going to be 20% off. But that's not to make people worry that you're not doing your job. Is explain to them, okay, there's some price lists here, and we're getting the best price list and an additional discount off of that price list. So pay attention to that, because you may be seeing that even in your own job as you do your contracts. So, and then not all discounts are equal. We've noticed something like this, as well as some vendors will have a price list where the item is $1 and they will only give you 1% off. And then on a different price list, that same item will be $12 at 90% off. You may want that 90% off, but it's really not the best price. So pay attention to that, and as you talk to vendors, talk to them about the price list that they're using in your contract. Okay? So with that change in discounting comes a better way of needing to benchmark. And so what state purchasing is going to start doing more of is benchmarking our contracts more frequently. Now I know I'm going to butcher this company's name. GovSpend? Is that it? Is it GovSpend? So we're going to test out GovSpend for the next 18 months and see if it actually has practical value in what we're doing. Is GovSpend alleges that it has millions of line items of products being purchased throughout the United States by public entities. And so we're going to benchmark a lot of our items on our contracts, not only for price, but in terms of terms and conditions, and in terms of other parts of the contract. Because we want to know that we're giving you the best value. And yes, I understand that some contractors will give you better pricing if you agree to jurisdiction being in New York and a limitation of liability being 0, meaning that they will never be held liable. But that contract's useless to you, because eventually, if there's an issue, your legal counsel will not want to go to New York to fight that battle, and so you'll just lose. And so we're going to benchmark everything, and if you want us to benchmark a specific contract, let us know, and we will do that for you to show that you're getting best value. We want to show that the contracts are best for you and that they're the best for the state. Okay? But that takes communication. So if you know one of our contracts is getting beat out somewhere else, let us know. We've already had a discussion with dozens of vendors saying you're going to give us a lower pricing because we found lower pricing elsewhere. We're not going to change any of the terms, the T's and C's, but you're going to give us lower pricing. And we're going to go from there. But we need you to communicate that with us. It is not just say, oh, I need to take contracts, but let us know what that pricing is so that we can share that benefit. Is we just don't want one entity getting a cheaper discount than everybody else paying more. Is let's all get that same discount and be a part of the team. Okay? But then we also wanted to talk about the procurement profession and what the division of purchasing is doing to supplement that. is we want to be seen as more of a profession and not just something that you do in your job. Is that this is something that can elevate your career as well. And what are we going to do in the division to do that? Okay. We're going to get away from marketing the profession. It's just being focused on cost cutting. Because I think the profession has moved away from just being low cost anymore. A lot of more solicitations are being run as RFPs, as professional services, whatever they may be. And we need to show value beyond just getting the lowest cost whenever we can. But a profession that can show that we're getting value in other areas as well. Is that we're just not going to get the lowest cost chair, but we're going to get the chair with the best warranty because we need that warranty and so on. And as we do that, the profession builds because others will rely on us to get the product that they need and to get the product that they didn't know that they could get as we move to that area. So with that, it comes continuously trying to improve yourself. I'm always trying to push my staff to improve each solicitation that they work on. Because you're probably learning something new every solicitation. Oh, I wish I would have known this or that on my previous solicitation. I'm going to incorporate that process into my new ones. And so we need to understand the goals of what's being purchased, use data analytics on it, and just go through a process of continual improvement. And I don't think the profession is just a simple saying we're buyers or sellers anymore. I think we're more project managers of the procurement process because it deals with us dealing with customers, suppliers, managing expectations, managing relationships, defining scopes, defining capabilities. It is so much more than just saying we want X, Y, and Z. All right, it's not that simple anymore. We need to be more project managers as we carry this out. And as we do that, we bring so much more to the table than what's been done in years past. And that's a skill set. Is being a project manager is a skill set. It goes beyond just saying, tell me what you want and I'll get it for you. It means working with them, really understanding what's being bought. And I'm sure most of you do that already. But it's being able to do that in such a way that they want to come back to you and you create those raving fans that want to work with you because they know how well you are and how good of a job you do. Okay. So this is just a slide that talks about, I look at this as more of a, it says acquisition life cycle of a tree swing. I think this is just any acquisition, any procurement model we go through. So it says how customer explained it, how the project leader understood it, and we'll just go through these. So first, how the customer explained it. We probably get this all the time. I'm giving credit to Justin on this slide because like I said, I just know how to post pictures on a PowerPoint. I don't know how to do this cool little function where you hit a button and the new picture shows up. So how the customer explained it. Then you go to how the project leader understood it. Can everybody see there's a difference? And this occurs a lot with our procurements, doesn't it? This is what they wanted. This is how we understood it. This is what the project leader wanted. Okay? This is how they designed it. Okay? This is how the programmer wrote it. And this is how the business consultant described it. Okay, now moving on. This is how the project was documented. We all get that part, right? Okay? This is how the operations installed it. This is how the customer was billed. Okay? This is how it was supported. This is how contract management occurred. And this is what the customer really wanted. And how many, I mean, you don't need to raise hands, but I've gone through a procurement similar to this. Is that everybody's misunderstanding. Everybody's not on the same page, and that's all they're really looking for, but we've gone through this whole process in the procurement. Because it probably happens frequently. But as you develop those relationships with the suppliers and with your customers, it's going to be easier to know exactly what's needed and what's really should be expected from the procurement. So professionalism as well as developing a good base to hire from. We are going to start more of an internship program at the Division of Purchasing. We've got another intern coming in over the summer. I plan on having an intern in there year-round at some point. If the program takes off and there's interns out there that we get more than what we're expecting, if anybody else wants to participate, I'll send them your way, letting you know that you have free labor. But an internship is a great way of developing skills, developing an understanding of the profession, and giving a good base of people that want to enter this profession. I don't know about you, but I didn't go to law school thinking one day I'm getting into public procurement. Is I'm glad I fell into this position, and I love it, and I'm passionate about it. But there wasn't any training in college. There's supply management, I get that, but that doesn't get into the public procurement of it. And we deal with a different animal than most when it comes to supply chain management. And so we're starting an internship program. And if you want to participate in it, as we open it up and get applications, and we know we can't hire everyone or bring everyone on, we'll pass them on to you guys. And if you guys have that set up, we hire them as TLs in our HR system. So they're temporary employees that we will define as 6 months. And that's all the internship will be, and we'll set expectations and go from there. But we have one coming in this summer from, I think Penn State is where we have one coming in. So, and we're looking at another one from Michigan State. So, but then I also want to open this up to the Utah colleges, being able to apply for these internships, because I think it's a great avenue to developing skills and getting experience with public procurement. Okay. So part of being a professional is accountability. So we got to earn respect. We've got to be honest. We've got to be ethical, and we've got to have integrity. And a lot of that comes with audits. I know there was an audit that just came down recently. I haven't had really a lot of time to review it, but I know that what is in there isn't just to degrade us, but something for us to learn about and apply it and become better from it. And that's how I view audits. Is the same legislator that told me that public procurement was dead also told me that she was going to call for a legislative audit on the Division of Purchasing. And I surprised her when I said, great, let me know when it's at. I'll go to the committee and support this audit. And she never brought it up again, but I wish she would have, because audits help define systems, help create accountability in what we do. And we shouldn't look as though they're a negative at all, but that they can be seen as a positive and learning experiences. So we'll learn from that audit that came out from the state auditor's office and train on it and become better from it. But that helps in the development of that profession. Yeah.
What was the subject of that?
Oh, okay. The subject of the audit was procurement practices for charter schools and school districts. And the auditor went through some different school districts and charter schools and found some findings relating to public procurement. And one part that I read was on retention of documents, that some school districts and charter schools were not retaining their documents properly. And so that's something that we need to really work on, because as public employees, we need to make sure that we're held accountable for everything, and that comes back to records as well. So kind of to end is the comic up here saying, here's your buzzword bingo card for the meeting. If the boss uses a buzzword on your card, you check it off. The objective is to fill a row. You're all very attentive today. My proactive leadership must be working. And one says bingo, sir. And you hear a lot of different buzzwords when it comes to procurement. You hear agile procurement, you hear modular procurement, you hear a lot of different ones. And it's stuff that I want to look at to see if we can improve from it. So as you guys hear these different buzzwords, let me know so that we can take a look and see if it works. At our PEP meeting next Thursday, we're going over one of these buzzwords. We did a best value procurement through Dr. Dean Kashiwagi. I hope I said that name right. Did I say that name right? And we purchased our new contract search engine, which is going live in the next week. So hopefully it works. And using a different procurement process that frankly made a lot of people uncomfortable. Faye here. Faye, did it make you uncomfortable, that process, at the beginning? She's nodding her head yes. And what did you feel about it at the end?
I feel like we got a system that we want.
Okay, make sure I say this right. You said we got the system that we wanted. And so it was a different process. I'll let you know that is we just went, the LDS church is going through a similar process right now with that best value procurement process. And so Wendy and I went and sat in on the vendor meeting, and I can tell you that they had the same look on their face about this isn't gonna work. And they just released the RFP, and they're actually starting to buy into it more and more because of the process. So when we talk about public procurement, there's improvements going on. It's just sometimes figuring out what works and what doesn't for us. And we're willing to test those out. So if you hear of anything, let me know. But we're gonna have an explanation of that agile procurement method, best value next Thursday by Wendy. So it's a buzzword that you can all mark down on your bingo cards. So I'm sure you're gonna hear more about it. But as we grow the profession, we have to be willing to change from what we've normally done. And that may be being uncomfortable with new processes and learning from them. So that's kind of where the division's going. We're open to anything you guys want to talk about. I know my time's short. If you have any questions, let me know. If you want to meet with me at any point today, let me know. If you want to call me, what's my number? It's on my phone, I promise you. You know it?
No, I don't know your number, but Holly, who is not in attendance, but is listening, would like to know whether I would want to be.
Yeah, I can give people a call. There wasn't anything in there that we'll post it on our website. The map was included, that was the cool part. I'll give it to Jason to put on our website, and Jason, we have a few people that can help maintain a website. My number is 801-538-3254. So if you want to give me a call about anything you've heard today, let me know. Don't be embarrassed. I'm still learning this profession as well. I don't think I'll ever be an expert on it. But that's why we should all be willing to work together. All right. Oh, I got another question.
Is the state sticking with their certification program?
Oh.
I'll be back at NIGP.
No, we're sticking with, I think both are great. Our certification process should be online here soon.
Have 15 questions up.
Woo! So our focus isn't to treat the profession, but just make sure everybody that enters in has a resource to be able to go and review the code. Because I think that becomes a problem, is the code becomes burdensome, and then do I know it, do I not know it? And this is just a test and a certification that you can go, it's open book, review questions, common questions that we've received over the years, and be able to answer those in the test. So we're not trying to say don't go get NIGP certified, because I think the CPPB and CPPO is great for the profession. It's getting as much accreditation as you can. This is just a way of being able to utilize our procurement code and become focused on that. Because my understanding is the CPPB and CPPO don't touch the retail procurement code. I have to take it, I don't have the time yet, or the time that's necessary to take the test. Any other questions? Did everybody hear me, or did the microphone die? It's been off the whole time. All right, well, thanks everyone. Thanks for your time.
Just want to give Chris his certificate of appreciation for coming and speaking to us today. Thank you very much.
Julie.
You can get in it.
We have a 15-minute break. We will be at 10:45.
For those of you who are new, there's restrooms here and restrooms down this hallway. That's good.